Welcome. My name is Christopher Peter. At the end of the day, the result matters. But since the journey is still ongoing, the areas of opportunity to be more effective and efficient are important, as future opponents will exploit obvious gaps in performance. My Philadelphia Eagles are 4-0 after winning in Tampa Bay, which has been a home of horrors for the Eagles during the Hurts and Sirianni era. 2 playoff losses to the Buccaneers took place in the pirate ship, 1 lopsided loss last year before the bye in the Great Run. From a bird's-eye view, Eagles fans should be satisfied that our Birds went into a challenging environment to face a team that had their number, and they won the game from wire to wire and never trailed for one moment against a team that was also undefeated. The problem once again was the way it looked. For 4 straight quarters, their offense was on fire. Jalen Hurts was playing well and they were scoring almost at will. The problem is that those 4 quarters were not all in the same game. After starting slow and looking like they would get blown out against the Rams, they had a strong second half to win that game. They started strong this week against the Bucs on all phases, making the game appear on the path to a blowout, but they had -1 total yard in the second half. I do agree with the mentality that as long as you achieve the main goal of victory, the rest can be fixed later, but I think we still have reason to worry that once again we have an offense that will be an anchor for this team. 2023 was a season that us Eagles fans want to forget about, and it is a much different situation than what we are facing now. That Eagles team was coming off a Super Bowl loss and imploded on the pressure they put on themselves. But they also had coordinators who were learning on the job. Not a great match when you have talent that can contend now, but leaders that are experiencing moments for the first time in their careers on both sides of the ball. The 2025 Eagles are not in that situation. The defense has an experienced leader with young talent getting better each week. The offense is led by a coach that has been with the team on day 1 of the Sirianni era. My concern is with our ability to be assertive and not overthink the need to avoid the loss. I generally feel that teams that play to protect a lead instead of continuing to grow the lead will eventually lose the lead, especially if you try to do it for an entire half. The heat and losing linemen did not help our efforts, but we need to be able to move forward without forcing the ball on one player, but being aggressive when necessary and taking what is given when appropriate. We need to get back to getting first downs and draining the clock. Now let us talk about the rest of the league. Maybe I got ahead of myself with some of my picks with who would be a contender and which teams were pretenders. 2 or 3 teams really stuck out this week for all the wrong reasons. First, the Green Bay Packers in no way, shape, or form should be satisfied with the way they played on defense against the Dallas Cowboys in a game that ended in a tie. An offense without its best receiver did whatever they wanted against the Green Bay Packers. It looks even more troubling that Packers players were calling for an undefeated season not that long ago, and now they lost to the Cleveland Browns and tied the Dallas Cowboys, who were without their star, and the Packers arguably have a far superior roster than them even if fully healthy. I know the mantra is any given Sunday, but the Packers simply did not play good enough on defense and are trending downward clearly after a dominant win in Week 1 and holding off the Commanders in Week 2. If you are a Super Bowl contender, you have to beat a rookie quarterback in his first start. The Chargers handled Patrick Mahomes to open the season, but the Giants' rookie Jackson Dart was able to lead the Giants to a victory over the Chargers. The Chargers must be able to beat teams that do not reside in the AFC West to be a true contender this year. They started so good, but this loss kind of knocked off some of that shine. I get that it was a road game and the Giants were probably motivated by the change, but you have to beat a team that is on the brink of regime change. Maybe the Ravens are not as good as we expected. The Baltimore Ravens are 1-3 right now. Let that sink in for a bit. So many pundits speak on the quality of the roster that they have for this year, but they are tied for last place. They still have plenty of time, but the quality of football they have shown so far kind of shows that they deserve to be right where they are. I picked the Chiefs to win the game, but I would have expected the Ravens to put up a better fight. They have helped right the Chiefs' season, moving them to 2-2, only 1 game behind and head-to-head loss behind the Chargers. But the Ravens fans have to question if this team can compete against the big teams with the talent they have. The Lions came into their stadium and controlled the game on the way to victory. They went into Arrowhead as the favorite and were humbled even further and lost players to injury. So the season is not going anywhere as expected. The Niners probably should have stayed with the hot hand in Mac Jones. Brock Purdy returned and led his team to defeat against the Jacksonville Jaguars, in a game following a controversy surrounding an awkward statement regarding sign stealing. I believe the whole purpose of spending a great deal of time watching tape and studying your opponent is to identify tendencies or tells that your players can exploit to know what may be coming. So I am not really sure why it was a big deal. More of the connotation of the accusation. One thing that I suspected would happen this season is that the Washington Commanders may take a step back, and that seems to be what is happening early on. They lost to the Falcons this week, who are not playing up to last year's level consistently. The Commanders are talented, but last year was monumental for their building their new foundation. But their roster is veteran-heavy and the league is no longer surprised. And the Falcons nicely rebounded from being shut out the previous week. Both are 2-2. The Steelers played the first international game of the season against the Minnesota Vikings with Carson Wentz at quarterback. The Steelers edged them out and are sitting at the top of the AFC North. Still early, but we are seeing the Ravens in crisis and the Steelers where they thought they could be. The Buffalo Bills will probably win the division within the next few weeks as they continue to win. The Patriots are back to 500 and the Dolphins beat the Jets in a battle of the winless bottoms. The Patriots could potentially make the playoff field if they can play their best more consistently. I could see the North getting one team right now unless the Ravens correct the course, potentially two from each other division. In the South, those two could be the Colts and one other. The Colts experienced their first defeat, but still played well. The Texans finally found someone they could beat, so they may be able to chase down the Jaguars. The Titans are still struggle bunnies adapting to a new quarterback and they are a guaranteed win so far for their opponents. Seattle opened Week 4 with a close win in the desert. They allowed the Cardinals to tie the game, only to travel down the field to kick a game-winning field goal. So Seattle joins the Niners at the top but have already lost to them. The Lions are now back where they belong, sitting at the top of the North after watching the Packers decide that a tie was good enough for them on Sunday night. The Lions have rebounded quite nicely and re-established their identity following their Week 1 loss. Finally, the Bears beat the Raiders on the road. The Pete and Geno era Part 2 is not going so well. The Broncos ended the Week 4 action with a decisive win over the Bengals who are still without Burrow. I did pretty well with my picks, 4 correct picks and a tie. Funny, I thought the Green Bay pick was the safest one I made. This week, I will take the Ravens to bounce back against the Texans, pick the Tampa Bay Bucks to travel north to Seattle and win. I will take the Chiefs to beat the Jags, pick the Jets to notch their first win against the Cowboys. And the Rams should be able to win against their division rivals in the Niners at home. The Ravens, Bucks, Chiefs, Jets, and the Rams. In the modern view of society and the world in general, driven by commercialism, we see everything in the near term may not be sustainable, but the long term is rarely a major concern for many, or at least that is the perception. For instance, there is somewhat of a growing concern amongst the investor community that quarterly reporting is impacting the quality of corporate governance. Business leaders are perceived to obsess over the short term rather than the big picture. Because investors want to grow and compound profit, the appeal of consecutive strong quarters may be appealing to investors more so than a company that is growing overall throughout the year. Even if the actual benefit is the same, there may be a bias in favor of more good data points. Just like any field, people leading businesses that require capital investments will start focusing on appealing to the interests of those providing the needed funds. Therefore, a greater focus by chief executives on quick turnarounds rather than slow and steady projects. Instant gratification is very popular because of the fear that the wait may not be worth it. And that is not just with investing, but society at large. People want to see immediate results and issue quick judgment. But, in public policy, the actual effects of politics may not be quick fixes. Effective public policy generally requires implementing programs that require foundational projects before the public ever experiences the actual impact of the new policy. In the era of constant news and social media, policymakers will have the same attention span issues, where they may focus on snapshots rather than the broader images, sometimes purposeful and sometimes political. In New Jersey, local Democrats thought it may be of interest to voters to claw on their national party agenda to distract from local party failures, seen with billboards questioning where the benefits of the Trump economic agenda is at. An expected approach taking low-hanging political fruit, and one that could have been effective if the then incoming administration did not set the premise that many policy approaches would have a longer-term view than what is vogue in modern-day politics. A legitimate concern is whether the wait is worth it. This year has seen a plethora of promised investments from global corporations to foreign nations and allies in formal trade deals or purchase agreements. Trillions of dollars secured in investments to domestic production or purchases of domestically produced goods. Good economic news and helps the political purposes of the administration in power. But are the people benefiting? Those investments will take time to come to fruition. Plants will need to be built, staffed, and operationed to produce and deliver on those commitments. Collections of revenues from that economic activity and data tracked before one can truly see the full benefit of those deals. Politically, there are some running narratives myopically obsessing over the near term. Employment has not dramatically increased. The market appears to be at equilibrium, or there are no domestic workers for these roles. Correlated policies may help this when you look at the grand picture. Policies like the tariffs and trade rebalancing along with recent revisions to visa programs may restore fairness in global product markets and labor that will help with alleviate these early concerns. The workforce is going through a shift. Workers displaced because labor markets had bad public policies that made foreign workers structurally more cost-effective than domestic workers will now have an opportunity to earn work now. I do think that there are benefits from supplementing our domestic workforce with foreign talent. We want the best and brightest from all around the world. But we should not structure programs that create inequities harming the domestic workforce in favor of imports. Imported workers under the programs were generally paid less and companies received tax benefits that made the whole program incentivize foreign candidates over domestic ones. It is one thing if there were no candidates available or the company could not reasonably pay a domestic worker, but many companies exploited the tax difference to bolster profits, leaving the government to take care of the displaced domestic worker. The goal is to have fair markets and give opportunities while protecting those who policymakers are supposed to serve. American workers should be the main focus, while the secondary goal of bringing in global talent should supplement gaps. I'm not really buying the idea that people are not in the job market. First, job seekers will time out of the stat tracking if their search takes too long or if they take breaks, so there are job seekers who just may not be looking every week. That does not mean they stopped or that they are lazy. They may be going with the natural ebb and flow of the market for workers in the career field of their choosing. Some may be balancing the value of job offers versus public benefits. So, I think there is great value to the need to stock our economy with talent by ensuring able-bodied workers are available for work and not kept on the sidelines by overgenerous social safety programs that they really should not qualify for. I am all for society caring for those in need or those who truly cannot care for themselves, but everyone else should have to earn their keep. Workers should not bear the burden of themselves plus those in need and those lazy with greed. Reducing the excess and encouraging work combined with fixing market inefficiencies will be helpful in pushing able-bodied workers into the market and enabling them to find gainful employment. Being passed over simply because there is a low-cost alternative is not good. Reducing that cost disparity will push decision-makers to focus on increasing the number of domestic hires to manage labor needs without being exposed to the increased cost. While some will regurgitate the tariff excuses, the response will be the same in greater domestic recruitment to mitigate exposure. Sure, there will be some that legitimately need the program and they can continue doing so, but rebalancing is the right approach for fair labor practices, but it will not happen overnight. The benefits will take time. But will Americans want to defer benefits after what we went through during the prior 4 years? Some may have a near-term view that the realized gains in the near term may not seem like a golden age. We made some progress like stopping the growth of inflation and somewhat stabilizing supply markets to stagnating growth with uncertainty created with tariffs and trade concerns. In economics, how decisions are judged usually requires consideration of viable alternatives. Should we have continued down the path where global trade was not moving toward a brighter future for our interests and citizens? Should we have continued down the path of economic policy driven by political interest? The need to rebalance global trade was clear and obvious. Ideally, we would have seen our allies align closer and sooner with us, but the important ones came around. One would expect that the main violator of global trade would not sit pat and watch their efforts unravel without some fight or effort. We cannot cleanly break from China, but our policies have impacted them and lessened our demand. We still will be key trade partners, but we need to change the dependency from them and pivot to a less centralized model with a partner that completely opposes our views. Now, our biggest trade partner is with our southern neighbor, who should be more willing to assist with the greatest issue we have with them. We have essentially gifted them a boost in global trade, which should encourage them to keep their citizens within their borders to support the increased demand. They have an opportunity for mutual growth and security. Hopefully we can mend ties with our neighbor to the north. They need to come to their senses, but the socialist views held by their government will overshadow their reality. From an investment perspective, improving the conditions in the labor market to provide it the best opportunity to function in an environment that may go through a tech disruption seems like the best option than the status quo. The painful and challenging approach to rebalancing trade will potentially improve our position in global markets by removing barriers and increasing global sales is a win that will yield benefits, and it may alleviate supply chain concerns. The future is brighter than it was in 2024. More work is needed to address risks related to our government spending and our national debt level. The annual debt payment is excessive. So, there needs to be more efficiency in government. Not political, just economic reality. For the New Jersey voters, you might want to ask the Democrats using national talking points to explain why local decisions have not made utility prices lower, quality of communities better, and services reliable. Those are not made in Washington but in Trenton. They may need to question what sense it would make to double down on the same failed path. It does not make you a bad person for wanting a better option than what the Democrats recycle. The longest sports season in the United States has reached its end in dramatic fashion. Here is the playoff field, and this season has shown that money in itself cannot win a team a World Series. Money, culture, and quality of play is important. The top seed in the National League is the Milwaukee Brewers, far from a big market powerhouse, but the team is heavily supported by a loyal fan base and does a great job of identifying and developing homegrown talent with a sprinkle of free agency. While we are not far away from the Los Angeles Dodgers defeating another big spender in the New York Yankees in the World Series last season, the Dodgers are a wild-card team this year, but still a legitimate contender that blends homegrown talent with free agents that drive the winning culture that sustains there. The beautiful game of baseball will always be the mix of big market versus small market teams, but the new environment will lessen the ability for any team to run away with championships like the Yankees did in the 90s and early 2000s. The New York Mets are not shy about trying to win their next World Series with a checkbook. They went out and bought the richest free agent last offseason, adding to a high-priced talented roster that entered the year with high expectations. The Mets overachieved in 2024, getting hot late in the year and sending my Phillies home on their way to a National League Championship Series appearance. This year they were passed by a team that went .500 over the last half of the season. They spent more but got less in return. My Phillies became big spenders too when ownership realigned and John Middleton promised to spend stupid money to return the Phillies to contention. He went out and secured the biggest free agent that year in Bryce Harper. But he realized early on that big spending alone was not going to work. The Phillies needed a strategy and to have a winning culture, one that has led to sustained contention over the past 4 or 5 seasons. Hopefully soon we will expand our World Series trophy haul. But the Mets experienced another season collapse that is all too common for them. Unlike the previous ones, where the Phillies elevated their play to surpass them, this year, they simply forgot how to play sound baseball, while the Phillies were consistent throughout the year. The Phillies did not knock them out of the playoffs. Sure, there was that sweep in New York where they thought they would come back for the division only for us to sweep them in Philly and send them spiraling. But the Cincinnati Reds were the ones to take the final spot with a loss. Go Brewers, said Pete Alonso, who did not factor his team was not going to score a single run. Poorly timed team tweet after the sweep and poorly conceived statements on the last day of their season. The Detroit Tigers also fell out of first place late in the season, but it seemed like the Mets gave them cover in the news. Being caught by the Cleveland Guardians, a perennial playoff team, is not that surprising as their fellow Ohio team who is not as successful. The baseball season is a long winding journey where it is not surprising that highly paid stars with guaranteed contracts may become complacent or simply lose focus at some point. When you have that much money invested, it can be easy for players to put themselves above the team. The Phillies play in concert with the fans. That engagement with the fans drives star free agents and drafted talent alike to play hard every night or be accountable to the Philly faithful. The Dodgers play to be the best form of entertainment in an entertainment center of America. The Mets just did not play to win in a city that they once again will remain in the shadows of their crosstown rivals, the New York Yankees, who at least made the playoffs. While I do not offer financial advice, I do like to highlight trends taking place in the business community and financial markets. How many of these headlines-grabbing mergers from years past will decide that it is best to unwind after all? Over the last few years, it seems that many of these mergers that combined product portfolios from consumer goods companies with top brands decided it is better to separate. Kellogg's, maker of cornflakes, is no longer an independent company, following a spin-off then acquisition by Ferrero. The end result of a shifting food marketplace that was once driven by snacks and not moving away from heavily processed foods. Now, we see this with Kraft Heinz, who will reverse the mergers that brought these two well-known brand names together. Who has not had burgers topped with a Kraft single and Heinz ketchup? Every diner has both. But they too have decided it is time to part ways. Processed commercialized cheese is no longer a popular product as much as the more artisanal or local offerings people seem to prefer now. As much as people worry about the impact of consolidation in important markets, there is always the reality that many times the newly enlarged entities are not as competitive or become more susceptible to upstarts than previously anticipated. We are seeing this in media, where legacy media companies are not trying to unwind acquisitions as the competitive advantage is no longer the number of channels controlled, but the quality of content brands that is produced and distributed on their streaming services. These large entities are designed to be greatly efficient in the existing market, but when the market shifts, they are unable to adapt and innovate at times, so they separate or acquire a solution. But many times there is not another purchase to make up the difference. We are seeing Disney put up the good fight in trying to make their networks thrive where others fail. ESPN continues to invest in content acquisition, where others are focused on licensing and streaming produced content. They are expanding their platform and channel menu while launching a new streaming service. Hopefully they can buck the trend. But it seems like consumers are moving away from established brands to some degree as well. Luxury brands are seeing an impact, not just for economic reasons, but brand boredom to some degree. I would suspect there is a level of wanting to support new brands and connections with ones that engage with them differently. Will there be as big of an appetite for acquisitions in the future? I think it could still make sense, but I think there will be more of a complementary brand that adds revenue in a new space and connections between existing brands with that new space. The mergers, because of the need to grow market share or brand portfolios, will probably no longer make sense. As people become less brand loyal and conscious, having the biggest selection is less important. Quality will become more important. It always comes back to quality and innovation. I hope that companies like Campbell's will not need to seek acquisition. They have good brands and products, and recent acquisitions seem to grow their business into new markets. They too have divested from brands that have detracted value as markets shifted. Markets change, and what worked in the past may not work in the future. That is the interesting aspect of the market. Thank you for experiencing this episode of the Christopher Peter Podcast, part of the Christopher Peter Review. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes of the Christopher Peter Podcast and the CRC. Thank you once again. Until next time.